Hi, I'm Justina Calgiano, and we are here today on Pet Matters with some friends from the Botstiber Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control. And we have Monique, Principe, and Stephanie Boyles-Griffin with us. Hi, ladies.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So normally we talk about cats and dogs and all things related to them on our show, but today we're going to talk about wildlife fertility control, which is a really important topic. I want to start out by just getting a brief history of the Institute. Could you share that with us?
Sure. The Botstiber Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control, it was established in 2016 as a partnership between the Dietrich W. Botstiber Foundation, which is located locally here in Media, Pennsylvania, with the Humane Society of the United States. And it really has an educational aim. And it seeks to advance the knowledge and acceptance of wildlife fertility control as a optional management tool for managing wildlife populations.
Okay, great. So the main issue here that we want to talk about is fertility and fertility control. So what does that mean to kind of the general public here?
So the field of wildlife fertility control began with the attempt to resolve conflicts between humans and wildlife in a more humane, non-lethal, and publicly acceptable way. So two things are happening. We have humans expanding into areas that are populated by wildlife through urban development, urban sprawl, and So when that happens, there are inevitably going to be conflicts between wildlife and humans. So we use deer as an example. So deer are now coexisting with people in areas like Lower Merion and Media and Radnor, and they can cause conflicts between us and them. But there is a high level of desire by the public to have a humane, non-lethal way of managing their populations. So in the past, culls have been done to manage these populations. The problem is they're highly controversial. They're short-term fixes because the population quickly rebounds, and I'm talking about deer specifically, but that tends to be the case in a lot of situations where you're trying to manage wildlife populations simply by killing a few of them every year, and then the population bounces back. So the idea is to use wildlife fertility control in concert with site-specific mitigation strategies to create sort of a comprehensive way of managing wildlife conflicts so that we're promoting coexistence with these animals that the HSUS refers to as our wild neighbors. We want to engender sort of the idea that, that we're sharing this world with these animals. They're attempting to adapt to changes that we're making to their environment, and so we want to do what we can on our part to be attempting to coexist with them as well.
Absolutely. It's really important work that you guys are doing, and it's very appreciated. So you'd mentioned site-specific mitigation. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what that means for someone like me?
Sure. And I'll use deer again just because I'd like to use an animal that people can sort of relate to. So with deer, the most common complaint with deer and homeowners, private property owners, is having them forage and damage ornamental shrubs, annual and perennial plants. So a couple of the site-specific mitigation strategies that we encourage are to either deny access to those areas where those ornamental shrubs, those desirable plants exist, or to make them unattractive to them. So unattractive can mean spraying them with like a liquid repellent called liquid fence. There are a bunch of different products you'll see at the nursery for making deer stay away from plants that you want to plant. You can also plant things that they don't like to eat. So replacing an annual with an annual that they won't eat. So those are two. And then, of course, a really obvious one is exclusion, either building fences around large pieces of property that deer cannot jump or find a way to get through, or actually keeping some sort of exclusion device around a particular plant that you want to protect. Some people will see the little, almost looks like baskets over pansies. Pansies are like candied to deer.
Are they?
And so people either treat them with liquid fence, or they'll put something that you really can't see. It's almost transparent until you get close to it, but it's something that the deer will not try to eat through.
Okay.
So from a distance, you can't see it. People can enjoy and benefit from the plants being there, but you don't have to worry about spending a tremendous amount of money only to have them gone the very next day, because they will if a deer finds them, and there's not a reason for them not to eat them. They think that they're there for them, that you've left them a little gift there. Right. So we have to find a way. With site-specific mitigation strategies, you're really trying to communicate with an animal like a deer, and the only way they can understand, let them know you don't want them there, or you don't want them eating that thing.
Sure.
So it's an invitation, and we're giving them an invitation to come into our backyards by planting all these wonderful things that they like to eat. They don't understand that we don't want them there, so we either have to keep them from coming in, or we have to make it undesirable for them to eat it.
And although we're most familiar with deer in this area, almost every community throughout the world has their own version of deer that they're dealing with every day.
Right.
And I was amazed to find out when I learned more about these efforts that there are so many people in communities all over the world dealing with these issues with different species. In Europe, they're dealing with wild boar that are, coming into their communities. We have wild horses that roam our western territories of the United States.
Sure.
So, although
kangaroos in Australia,
and that's very surprising that kangaroos are.
So the public's perception of deer in places like Pennsylvania, it's very similar to places like Sydney, Australia, with kangaroo. It's almost like kangaroos are their deer issue, and people are grappling. That's their nation's animal. And in addition to animals that are so iconic like the koala, and they're doing contraception with both of those animals in order to mitigate conflicts between them and humans. If you can imagine that people have conflicts very similar to deer with kangaroo and koala, and
it's a situation that we've created by expanding our communities into their territories, and now we have to learn how to live together peacefully.
Right. How do we coexist?
Right.
So, what do you guys say when the topics come up of very angry people who are very angry at the deer, and they just want to do perhaps some lethal methods? How do we change those conversations?
Right. I think it's tough because I sympathize with them. They spend hard-earned money to make the outside part of their homes beautiful. And they don't want the deer coming in and eating. But as I said before, the problem is the deer don't understand that.
Right.
You have to speak to them in a way, or communicate with them in some way, in a way that they understand it's going to be effective for you. The other thing that I emphasize is that killing a certain number of the animals isn't going to necessarily eliminate the animal that's coming into your community and eating your plants. So it's really best for you to be implementing these site-specific mitigation strategies, number one, because it's the most effective way for you to protect your property and to let the deer know they're not welcome and that you don't want them eating these plants, if that's something that's important to you. But number two, when these programs, because we're living in a society where people are becoming much more mutualistic in their accepting of these animals, these programs can be really controversial and polarizing in communities where they're conducted, and so for that reason, this approach for communities that are trying to keep peace, not just with the deer, but within the community, with each other, they try to find a way to mitigate the damage that's not going to cause even more problems within the community with people just getting along, because the issue itself can be so polarizing.
Absolutely.
People really, really love deer. Even the people that have problems with them, they don't necessarily want them to be killed. They want the problem solved, and they think that that's the only way to do it. And one of our jobs is to educate people, number one, that there are things you can be doing first to do site-specifically around your property that will work, and are far more effective than doing any form of population control if that's the problem. But then also, if it's way too controversial to do a cull, and it may not be effective over time, because like I said, you have to keep doing it over and over again in order to keep the population down, considering a fertility control program as a component of an overall deer management conflict management plan is a better approach.
Okay, well, can we talk a little bit about that fertility control? And I know you said the contraceptive program for
Right,
deer,
right.
because that's the one that's affecting our area the most.
Right.
So what are first steps that folks should take? Should they reach out to you?
They can reach out to the Botstiber Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control. They can reach out to the Humane Society of the United States. One really exciting thing that our group and our urban program has just developed is a framework that community leaders and communities in general can use to start the process of actually developing the deer conflict management plan. That's the most important thing, because not all the communities are the same, and it's really important to get a sense of what the conflicts are and figure out what the solutions that could be used to resolve them before you even start talking about managing populations. Because like I said, you could have 20 deer in a community where that's more than enough habitat and space for them, but if nobody is protecting their plants and flowers that they don't want to have damaged, you're not going to solve the problem by simply of killing a few of them, because the ones that remain will come and continue to, quote unquote, damage the property. They're going, like I said, they're just responding to an invitation that we're providing.
Sure.
So that's one of the reasons we really strongly encourage before people even think of any sort of population control.
Okay.
Think about site-specific mitigation, and think about creating a plan that has a lot of stakeholder engagement involved in planning it, so that you have consensus that when the plan is implemented, everybody's on the same. So it's really inclusive. Community leaders getting everyone that has a different kind of stake or vision for how they think the deer population should be managed or how conflict should be mitigated to be a part of the building process for that plan, so that when you're ready to implement it, it's not a surprise. It's been transparent. It's a transparent process. Everybody is invited to be a part of it. And it won't be as polarizing. No matter what they decide to do, everyone will be able to say, yes, I had an opportunity, and this is what's good. It's not going to work for everybody. There's always going to be somebody that disagrees, but you get the majority of the people in consensus on what the plan is going to be going forward.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what are you guys doing in our backyards now to help maybe control the population? Because I imagine you guys are probably doing a lot of work behind the scenes, right?
Well, we like to educate the public about wildlife fertility control in general, to give them an idea that there is something out there besides traditional means. And so we host events, seminars, workshops, conferences, and we find it's very helpful to convene people with wildlife biologists, scientists, to get the facts out and to have people collaborate and discuss these matters. So we're proponents of doing a lot of events, and we in fact want to hold something locally in the Philadelphia area on deer and human conflict management in the near future.
Okay.
So that's one of the ways. And just to educate people in general, our website contains a lot of information on previous presentations that we've hosted, webinars that we hold, that really just get the word out and get people thinking differently and how they can affect their communities.
Great. Okay. Can you share that website with us just so we can direct folks there?
It is wildlifefertilitycontrol.org.
Great. Okay. Now, what are some of the other species that you guys are dealing with in terms of trying to control the populations there?
So some of the partners that we work with, people that serve on our advisory board or experts in the field of wildlife fertility control. So we have folks that are working to manage wild boar with fertility control all over the world, not just in Europe, but in the U.S., in Asia, and in Africa. Also in Africa, a team with the HSUS's affiliate, our international affiliate is the Humane Society International. They've been working for probably almost 3 decades to use contraceptives to manage human-wildlife conflicts with African elephants.
Wow.
Another animal in the United States that Monique already mentioned, HSUS and our partners have been working with state and federal agencies to use fertility control to manage conflicts with wild horses and burros in the western United States, but also the first wild horse fertility control program actually started not a very long drive from here in Assateague National Wildlife or National Seashore, and so there are ponies there. They don't have any natural predators. They wanted the population down to about 100. I think they were around 180, 200 when they started the program, and over time they were able to use the PZP, porcine zonapalooza, a contraceptive agent, to successfully slow the population growth rate and then have the population go down naturally over time.
Okay.
So now they're at their what they consider to be their appropriate management level there.
Oh, that's great.
So we already mentioned kangaroos in Australia. We understand that there are some primate populations in urban areas like Hong Kong that they're using fertility control to manage. Pigeons in urban areas all over the world. There's an oral contraceptive that they're using in places like Italy and Spain, and then here in the United States to manage urban pigeon populations. And then most recently, the EPA registered an oral contraceptive for rats in urban areas.
Sure.
So that's just a couple, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg of the type of animals that these products are being developed. And of course, I mention white-tailed deer in urban areas and even black-tailed deer in urban areas out west.
Okay. So I would think that the ones common in our backyard are deer, we covered, rats, what else? Squirrels, maybe?
Squirrels.
Okay.
So squirrels in the
areas.
UK, there's to the best of our knowledge, there's no effort to control them here. They're doing it in the UK because gray squirrels, our native squirrels, were introduced there many years ago. I forget the reason why, but they're competing with the native red squirrel there. And because squirrels are incredibly adorable and cute, and because people in the UK like them whether they're native or not, there is a huge effort to develop a contraceptive system that will target the gray squirrels and not the red squirrels, that will bring their populations down over time without having to use any sort of lethal method to do it, because the public won't accept it. And they need to do it because the gray squirrels are out competing the red squirrels for the resources there. So everybody agrees that they need to be managed. They just want them managed in a humane and sustainable way.
And people
over time.
enjoy seeing them.
Yes, they really do.
Think they're adorable and they like seeing them in their neighborhoods, but they do have to think, how do we control the numbers?
Even people like Prince Charles have gone on record, like in the paper,
Absolutely.
Supporting this idea of managing the gray squirrels with contraceptives.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Yes.
To have that kind of support behind your efforts. So in terms of controlling the squirrel population, we talked a little bit about the deer population, but what are some good first steps that someone can take if their house is being overrun with squirrels on the roof?
Well, I would not encourage contraceptive in that
Sure,
case.
okay.
In that case, site-specific mitigation
Right.
strategies. The number one place squirrels get into are attics and chimneys. So if you haven't done it already, please get a chimney cap for your chimney.
Okay.
Make sure there's not a squirrel or a raccoon or a possum or some chimney swifts in there first before you do it. So maybe wait till the fall if you're not in a hurry. But when you're sure nobody's nesting in there, go ahead and put one of those on there. And then the other thing is make sure that you're routinely inspecting the eaves around the sides of your house, because they will damage them, but generally what happens is a part of it is in a state of disrepair, and then they just take advantage of it by creating a larger opening to get in there. So that's the best, by far the best way. And of course, people like feeding birds. The squirrels like the bird seed as much as the birds do, probably more. And so, for a period of time, if you can, removing that source of attraction will keep them from jumping around on the house and potentially finding an area of the house that they may try to use and turn into a nest site.
Sure.
So but once an animal has established a nest, we encourage them to wait until they're sure they're out of there. The young will eventually leave with the mother.
Okay.
And then once they're sure they're gone, have a professional come and inspect the area to make sure they're gone, and then professionally seal it so they can't get back in.
Okay. And I know you mentioned fall. Is that kind of generally a better time of year to just try some mitigation?
Yes, because with birds, with squirrels, with raccoons, even possums, that's from about December, even November to September. Where I'm from in the South, it's even longer. They can have 2 or 3 broods.
Wow.
So it's around end of September, October, November that you want to be inspecting those areas. Okay. But the other times of the year, you have to be careful because squirrels and raccoons, their breeding season starts very early. It can be as late as it can be like late November and December, and certainly January, they're already finding nesting boxes and they're looking to brood.
Okay. Okay, that's great advice. So what are the plans for the future for the institution?
Oh, we're going to continue a very active program of events,
Okay.
Seminars. I mentioned the event we are planning in the Philadelphia area. And we update our website with current information. We have a quarterly newsletter to continue to educate everyone about wildlife fertility control. So I encourage, if people are interested in learning more, that they can sign up to receive our newsletter. And our website also contains really the only of its kind repository of information on wildlife fertility control.
Okay.
So if anyone really wants to read the scientific and the published papers on fertility control for wildlife, they're available there at our website.
Great.
Yeah, and specifically on deer. So last May we had a urban deer fertility control workshop in Tarrytown, New York. All of the video presentations from that event are on our website right now under the events page. And then we just recently had a deer conflict management seminar in Harrisburg about a month ago, maybe a little less than a month ago. And those two presentations are on the website as well, so people at their leisure can go in and watch them, learn from the experts, and then if they want to get in touch directly with any of our speakers to learn more about anything that they presented about,
Absolutely.
they can reach out to us and we can put them in touch with them.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. They're so accessible. Great. So what is a good first step, would you say, for someone who wants to help support your efforts? Would it be attending the workshop that's coming up? Would it be maybe starting some of those mitigation efforts maybe for deer? If someone is foreign to the idea but really wants to help?
It depends on the animal that they're interested in. So if it was deer, I would highly recommend downloading the comprehensive framework for creating a management plan for your community. And it can be any size community. It can be a neighborhood, it can be a village, it could be a township, it could be an entire county. But it starts at that level of understanding how to create an effective plan, whatever that plan is going to be, so you can customize it for your community.
Right.
So if you're not a community leader, but you're one of those people that show up at your HOA meetings religiously and listen to people discussing the deer issue, if it's an issue in your community, I highly recommend downloading it, reading through it, and then sharing a copy of it with your board of directors, or if it's the township, your township council. That's a really great way to just start the process of building effective coexistence programs, something that's going to be sustainable and is going to actually address the conflicts that people may be experiencing with animals like deer.
Yeah, there's sort of preliminary steps that can be taken.
Okay.
And that's there in the guide. Those steps that are easily taken, that may someday lead up to fertility control, perhaps, if it's an appropriate, feasible option. But there are definitely the more day-to-day easy steps that can be taken
When
now.
people reach out to us, we like to tell them, yes, we are the Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control, but before you get there, you have to start with, what is your conflict? What are you doing already to try and resolve it? What could
Are
you be
you
doing that
doing
you're
everything?
not already? Are you doing everything? Because a lot of people want to jump quickly. Oh, we need a fertility control program. Well, you might, but let's start with where you're at and figure out where you might need to go, because you may not need to do anything to manage the population in order to mitigate the conflict. But it's important to go through that process to figure it out, again, so that as many people are involved as possible and there's widespread consensus within
And
your
community agreement.
Right. Sure. Okay. That's great. Well, everything you've shared today has been so helpful. So we want to maybe have people take action, but start small, and definitely visit that workshop that you have coming up. So I know I'm going to keep an eye out for it.
So
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Check our website.
Okay.
Again,
We'll stay tuned.
wildlifefertilitycontrol.org.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for being with us today. I've learned a lot, and I hope you have too. So we'll see you next time on Pet Matters.